Hello, friends. This is Sam Cheney reporting for Weaponized News. Today, June 12th, 2025. We have a very special guest on the line, Peter Duke from the Duke Report. Been trying to get him on for a while here now this year, but he's gone through tremendous tragedy in his life. They burned down his house and his whole neighborhood. They're in the Pacific Palisades. He lived through the LA fires. It's just insane. Now he's got to live through the riots potentially, and so we're going to get firsthand reporting on the ground what's going on there in LA in Southern California. I'm going to skip this day in history today so we can get right to them. Quickly, a couple things to cover. Bilderberg Group has released the agenda and the participants in this year's Bilderberg Group meeting. We'll go over that. We'll go over Senator, maybe Gavin Newsom and Senator Padilla over here can save us from Trump. Padilla got a handcuff today protesting at Ice Barbie's press conference. And so we'll go over that. And then his deep dives, he's doing a lot of deep dives. We'll get into these rituals in plain sight, the epistemological warfare, it's hard to even say, and how they're using language against us to mind control us, social engineer us, and so on. And so I think that's about it for the intro here. And I want to also touch on I wanted to touch on the fact our friend Dr. Malone has now been named by Bobby Kennedy Jr. to the advisory committee on immunization practices. And so we'll get his thoughts on what's going on with public health policy. And also, we were talking just before we came on the show, what is going on with YouTube? It seems like YouTube's been liberated and they're allowing all these people to get all their channels back in videos and whatnot after the 5-year blackout on anything that was counter to the mainstream narrative. So with that, we'll bring on Peter Duke here. How you doing this Thursday, Peter?
I'm doing great, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. A lot is going on. Let's go back to January, if you want to, and talk about what all you saw on the ground there with the LA, quote, wildfires, which we know in large part were started by arson, but the government wants to say it's climate change, it's wildfires. We couldn't have done anything about it. I know that had to be horrible for you, and you're still recovering, you and your wife, after having your home burned down and your whole neighborhood. What do you think is going on there? Was that to clear the way? I've been trying to follow your reports as best I can. Was all that to clear the way for a 15-minute city and this whole this globalist guy Berggruen that not many people know about, that you've been trying to spread the word about? What?
Well, I think that one of the things that I've learned over the years is that I believe that these events are planned way in advance. And you mentioned Nicholas Berggruen. The Berggruen Institute released a paper called the Blueprint to Renew California in 2011, and they've been doing all of these things to kind of reinvent government in California. And it's very tough to reinvent government if you don't have a government that is dysfunctional. And so, by virtue of the fact that Berggruen has kind of like maxed out his donations to all of these politicians, and I don't know if I can share some slides with you, but I could probably run through that later. But jumping to current events, more current events. Last November, it was really weird because my wife and I lived in a. I probably have some pictures I could share. Let me see. Can I share with this thing?
Yeah.
Share screen. All right, here we go. I'll just show, let's see, Duke, I think this is it, okay. All right, so here's a picture. So this is, I think this was a video that was posted today. This is a screenshot from the video. So the red dotted area in the lower left-hand corner is where I lived. There was a 8-unit, 100-year-old apartment building that was in this neighborhood that all of these houses were like $6 to $10 million houses. But because there wasn't enough multi-unit dwellings in Los Angeles. I was lucky enough to know about this apartment building when I got divorced 15 years ago, and I moved into an apartment in this building, and it was a lovely, great place. But you could see in the background there, because there's nothing in the way anymore. You could see the Wag the Dog house up on the top of the hill there. I think that was built by Bing Crosby, but I don't think he lived long enough to move into it. So his wife, Catherine Crosby, lived there. And then off in the background, the little white area is the Getty Museum, and right next to that is the Berggruen Institute. So just so that people have a lay of the land, this is kind of my neighborhood. And there are this was a neighborhood of about 200 or 300 houses, and you can see that 3 of them made it in this image. So I'll stop sharing and then I can start talking.
Why do you think those 3 houses didn't get burned down in this whole thing? I saw reports about if they had their smart wall or smart meters, even, that if those get hot, then it ignites even a hotter flame. And I saw reports that could have been causing, because of course there's a conspiracy. I don't believe they use direct energy weapons. I believe it was more on the ground. Like if you had a Tesla power wall, for example, with solar, and that all those lithium ion batteries got really hot for a fire, that like caused intense heat to make it that much hotter and just like literally blowtorch everything. Do you think that was happening there?
I think there were directed energy weapons, but I think they were drones.
Drones using directed energy weapons.
Yeah, well, no. Let me see. Share this tab instead. Okay, I'm sharing a screen. So this is a company called Drone Amplified, and Drone Amplified makes fire starter drones. They fly over and they drop these. Let me see if I can find the video.
I've seen a few videos. They say that's just for controlled burning, nothing to worry about.
Well, they say it's for controlled burning, but like any tool, Sam, you can use it. You could use a hammer to build a house, and you can use a hammer to bang somebody over the head with it.
To destroy a house too, yeah.
So I don't know if you're getting the audio. I'm getting
it. Yeah.
One of the best ways to combat wildfires is to use controllable, low-intensity fires that consume the fuel on the ground that would otherwise help a large, intense fire spread. Ignition spheres, similar in size and shape to a ping pong ball, are a great way to ignite a low-intensity fire. They can be dispensed using Drone Amplified's drone-based system and custom flight control software to safely ignite low-intensity fires over a large area.
Ping pong balls, as they're commonly referred to, has a dry chemical in it called potassium permanganate, and when you inject the ping pong ball with glycol or antifreeze, you get a reaction about 30 to 45 seconds later. The reason we use ping pong balls is because we can drop it from the air. They ping pong down through the trees and get to the ground level, so we can establish a backing fire, which generally, ecologically speaking, is more healthy for the forest, and it doesn't generate crown fire generally, because we can control the intensity of the heat. If we start at the top and bring a line of balls across the top and then step that down the ridge, you create a less intense fire and just generally underburn the large fuel mass that's generated under however many years of conditions they've had since the previous fire.
Drone Amplified has combined tested and proven technology with cutting-edge innovation in hardware and software to provide a safe, affordable, and effective way to advance the efforts of protecting our land, communities, and firefighters.
So I just want to be clear
that, it's even effective, Peter. They just told us.
Yeah, I just want to be clear too that I'm not accusing Drone Amplified of starting the fires. I'm just saying that there's technology out there to do this that exists, and by matter coincidence, one of the super scoopers on January 8th hit a drone, and the person was arrested, tried, and convicted in like 3 days. Now, here's where it gets interesting. the guy claims, and the picture that they show, all of these things are on different stories on my Substack, which you can get to by going to thedukereport.com. But what's interesting is that the guy who they arrested, the story is that he flew a drone from the top of a parking structure in Santa Monica, which is about 2.5 or 3 miles away as the drone flies. And the winds were gusting like 50 or 60 miles an hour. And I don't know if you've ever flown a DJI drone, but that's a pretty severe environment to fly a little drone like that, to fly that many miles out of line of sight, with those incredibly high winds. But here's where it gets interesting. The guy who they arrested for flying the drone turned out to be the president of a video game company. And I don't know about you, but most video game companies that have, a lot of employees, you would think that the president of the company would have better things to do than go out and fly a drone. But here's where it gets more interesting. His company is owned by Larry Ellison's son. So I think Larry Ellison is on the steering committee of the World Economic Forum. And he also provides, he's the CEO and president of Oracle, that has all of these CIA contracts. So it's very curious that the president of a video game company that is owned by Larry Ellison's son is out flying a drone 2.5 miles from where he claimed that it took it off, at the same time that super scoopers are running into drones.
That is all a strange coincidence.
Yeah. So anyway, backing up before that, in November of 2024, my wife and I were woken up. This is about 5 weeks before the fire, and I've posted video about this too. I can go find it if you want to see it. That there was 4 helicopters that were circling. I live on something called the Via de la Paz Mesa. And there were 4 helicopters that were circling the Via de la Paz Mesa for about a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. And a U.S. Army veteran told me that he thought that it looked like an infill-exfil exercise, which is the combination of Chinook helicopters with Apache helicopters. He said that looked like the type of configuration that they would use when they were taking a special forces team and dropping them off or picking them up. But they were practicing that over the exact area that I just showed you the picture of 5 weeks before the fire. So jumping to the day of the fire, my wife and I met each other on January 6th on the steps of the Capitol. And we celebrated our anniversary of our meeting each other on January 6th, and then we were woken up on January 7th by super scoopers flying over our house. And we ran out.
Wait, Peter. Let's go back to that. Did you suffer any shakedowns in the dragnet for January 6th, people? Because you were prominent there, taking photos and whatnot. Let's back up and just let me ask you that. Did you suffer any investigation or shakedown from the federal government in the J6?
No, I didn't. No, I did not, and I can tell you why I think that happened. I was the official photographer for Stop the Steal. I was not getting paid to be a photographer. One of my big problems with State Farm, like a bad neighbor right now, is State Farm doesn't want to pay me my personal property insurance because they say that my camera equipment was used for my business. And in fact, I was an unpaid photographer on Stop the Steal. So I was a volunteer. I was shooting pictures. Ollie Alexander brought me in. And I very quickly, after things started to go crazy, long story short, I had a VIP pass. I was at Trump's speech. I was in the front row. I was there with, all of the usual suspects that were in the front row there. And then because I was shooting still photographs, I decided to leave. And I tried to get to a place. There was a stage that was supposed to be set up between the Capitol building and the Supreme Court, where Donald Trump, at the end of his speech, was scheduled to lead a march down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, like Martin Luther King. Okay. And Ali Alexander and
back then you really believed in MAGA, right?
oh yeah, this was the day that all stopped.
Okay.
This was the end of Peter Duke.
I was believing in MAGA at that point as well. So
no, I was a true believer. I was all in. And I mean, when Ali Alexander called me up and asked me if I wanted to participate, he said, "Do you want to help save the world?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you want to come take pictures?" And I said, "Yeah." And that was it. So I made my way, after almost getting killed in a crush of people because there was no crowd control. I made my way to the back steps of the Capitol, the east steps of the Capitol, which is between the Capitol and the Supreme Court. By the time I got there, there was already massive demonstrations going on in the front. People had already broken into the front of the Capitol, but there was no way to tell that from the outside because all of that action was going on underneath the bleachers. So if you were walking up the mall towards the Capitol, you saw a bunch of people in front of the Capitol. You saw a bunch of protesters. You heard a lot of noise, but you didn't see anybody breaking in because all of that action was going on underneath the bleachers. You couldn't see that from outside. So I made my way around to the area where I was supposed to meet Alex Jones and Donald Trump and Ali Alexander. And I showed my credentials. I went through the gate. I made my way to the area where I was supposed to meet them. And I turned around and there were all of these guys. I will describe them as high and tight and squared away. That is, they all had civilian clothes on, but they very obviously, to me, looked like military guys that were dressed as civilians. Okay. And they were and they were talking to the guards. They were talking to all of the Capitol Police who were behind the gates. And then they were going and they were disassembling all of the gates. And this is just immediately after I had to show my pass to get through the gates. So I showed my pass. I went through the gates. 30 seconds later, I turn around. There's people taking the gates apart. And then they're waving their arms and they're urging all of the MAGA people to come in to the back steps of the Capitol. And I thought, well, this is not normal. Like, this is not anything that anybody told me was going to happen. And all of the people that I was supposed to meet, it didn't look like they were going to be able to get there. And so I thought, well, I better just go start taking pictures. And so I documented the entire event on the east side of the Capitol, which was between the Capitol and the Supreme Court. And what I noticed very quickly, and again, I didn't think about this in real time, it was only in retrospect that I kind of like reconstructed what was going on in my head. But there was two kinds of people there. There were people who didn't know what was going on. I was one of them. And there were people that looked like they knew exactly what was going on. And all of those people were high and tight, squared away, and using military hand signs. Okay. Doing stuff like this. And so instinctively, I just started taking pictures of those people. And I believe, and the next day after, everything had gone down, Ali Alexander called me up and he said, the FBI wants all your pictures. And I said, okay. And within about, an hour of him asking me, they were all in a Dropbox and I had delivered all of my photographs to the FBI. And what I believe, and I never got a phone call from the FBI. I never got a subpoena from the January 6th committee. Nobody ever asked me one question about it. And I believe it's because I definitely identified the command and control operators on the east side of the Capitol, and I took pictures of them. And not only did I take pictures of them, but like on my Peter Duke photo Twitter account, which I can bring up I have 2 Twitter accounts. I have the Duke Report and I have Peter Duke Photo. On my profile, I'll share this. Ding. Screen share. Twitter. There we go. This is my photo. These are the 2 guys. And I have a dozen or so pictures of these guys and a third guy that I believe were doing the command and control on the east side. And when I say command and control, I mean that at one point, all of the police, Capitol Police, were standing at the bottom of the steps. And it was a surreal scene because you had all of these MAGA people, little old ladies and older men telling the police that they loved them and that they were trying to save the country. And then at a certain point, these 2 guys, actually the guy in the red hat and another guy that was working with him, I'm going to stop sharing this for a second because it's not that interesting. They started making all these hand signs and the police backed up. They started backing up the steps of the Capitol. And to my eye, it looked like they were taking command and control signals from these 2 guys who were standing on top of a vehicle. And I was taking pictures the whole time. And that's why that guy said, hey, that guy is taking pictures of us. So my guess about why I never got subpoenaed by the January 6th committee and why the FBI has never called me is because I believe that I have identified the command and control structure on the east side of the Capitol, and they don't want that put into evidence.
You think they would burn down your house over that? I think they probably would. They're crazy.
Yeah, this again, it's called goal stacking. These globalists, if they can, the other thing about my neighborhood is that there's 150 million barrels of oil under my neighborhood, and Getty Oil, not Getty Oil, Occidental Petroleum. Occidental Petroleum owns the drilling rights to the oil that's under the Palisades, but they're not allowed to drill there because in the 1970s and the 1980s, the people of the Pacific Palisades got together and got the city to pass a ballot initiative telling Occidental Petroleum that they weren't allowed to drill for oil underneath the Palisades. Well, all of the people who organized that thing in the 1980s are either dead or homeless right now. So it'll be interesting. I don't think that Occidental Petroleum will run in there and say, hey, I want to start drilling now. But I've got a feeling, I think it's called goal stacking. You know, you're doing a real estate redevelopment program. You're doing a little energy deal. You know, there's all kinds of different reasons why you would want to burn down all of these houses in the Pacific Palisades. But there's lots of reasons. Like I said, my house sat on top of 150 million barrels of oil.
Wow, we're seeing that
low sulfur, the best kind.
We're seeing that same strategy all over the world. It just broke right now as we came on air that Israel attacked Iran. They bombed Iran right now. So we can look for that to escalate potentially. Hopefully it doesn't.
Yeah, hopefully the Iranians do the same thing as the Russians and they go, you shouldn't have done that. I think that there's enough smart people in the world that maybe we can avoid World War III. I was talking earlier. I just got this book a couple of days ago, 2 World Wars and Hitler. You heard of this book?
I saw you guys talking about it on your last show, your last stream that you did. Was it yesterday? I think.
Yeah, it'll blow a lot of people's minds. You know. Yeah, and I was talking to George Webb about it today too, because he was kind of defending Israel a little bit yesterday. And I said to him, George, Israel was created by the same people who created Hitler. Like, you can't square that circle. You know what I mean? Like you have to.
That's a great segue. Not to get off of the fire story, but who's running all? I've been trying to tell people, explain it through LaRouche, through you, other sources, that okay. I call them aardvarks. I don't even call them because of the censorship. But the aardvarks, let's say, we know who we're talking about. They're allowed to post their war crimes all over the internet, and then get and be the bad guy to the world. But at the top, who's pulling their strings? UK Western intelligence is pulling their strings.
Well, again, UK Western the intelligence agencies work for the money. Okay, and when I say the
cartel,
and when I say the money, well, yeah, but you have to understand that we all have banks, right? Okay, the banks have bankers, and the bankers work for the people who own the stock in the banks. Okay, so I don't even believe the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are at the tippy top. Okay, I think they're at the top of what we can see. Okay, but I believe that the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers answer to the descendants of the old Roman senatorial class. They're called the Black Velfs. The Windsors, who are the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, I think. They're Velfs. There's a lot of royal family. There's a lot of private equity that's bigger than any of the publicly traded things that are out there in the world. And so it's not, if you want to find out who they really are, then you take Jamie Dimon and you take Larry Fink and you take what's Evelyn Rothschild, Lynn Rothschild, and you take the 1st Marine Division and the Seabees and you rebuild Guantanamo on Alcatraz. Trump said that he wants to rebuild Alcatraz. I think Trump should do a 30-day facelift on Alcatraz, and then move Larry Fink and Linda Rothschild and a few other people, Jamie Dimon, and say, hey, dudes, this is kind of like what the what's his name, Bin Salman did when he took over control of Saudi Arabia. He took all of his enemies and he put them in the Ritz-Carlton, and he said, you can't leave until I know that you're not going to try to kill me when I let you out. And I think that that's probably the strategy that Trump needs to use. I don't see him doing it because I think he works for them. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Trump always chickens out.
He does what he's told. I think that the lesson. So part of the reason that I understand what I understand is that starting in 2014, I went into business with this guy who had turned out to be a U.S. intelligence agency asset. And
you've told me about that before, and you didn't know that up front going into business.
I was a true believer. I met Andrew Breitbart in 2010, and he said politics is downstream from culture. And I thought, I used to be a photographer, and I can do vanity. I used to work for Vanity Fair, and I can do pictures that look good, and I can make people look good. And as soon as I started doing that, New York Times Magazine sent a reporter out, and they called me the Annie Leibovitz of the alt-right. They tried to, paint me as some kind of they tried to paint me as an anti-Semitic white nationalist, which is funny because I designed the online education system for the Shoah Foundation Institute. So I designed all this entire Holocaust education network. So it's really hard to paint me as a Nazi, Anyway, I was a true believer, and I got into business with this guy. I did 2 or 3 different businesses with him. I did Got News, which was a news outlet, and then we did a crowdfunding site called WeSearcher, and then I did another crowdfunding site called Free Starter. And then one day my partner calls me up and he goes, "You'll never guess what happened." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I found $20 million in Bitcoin on an old laptop. I bought it when I was drunk in college and I forgot that I had it." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And he goes, "I'm going to start investing in biotech companies." So.
And what year was this?
This was 2017, 2000. Was it 2017? I don't know. Anyway, I'm looking at my wife trying
That
to.
is quite a tale.
Yeah, and a year later, he told me that he had a nervous breakdown because he found his grandfather on his deathbed let him know that he had been his handler his entire life, and that there weren't any decisions that ever happened his whole life that had been made that had been his decisions, including where he went to school and who he met and the jobs that he got and all of those other things. And so, he let me know that, the $20 million was. So somebody called him up one day and said, I need you to go invest $20 million in this company. And the next question that you're going to get is that you have is, where are you going to get the $20 million? And the answer is, it's already in your checking account. So that was a big eye opener, because I started looking at people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and all Peter Thiel much more differently than they used to. So why am I giving you this backstory? The reason I'm giving you this backstory is because the last time I talked to him, he said, the one thing that people don't really understand about all of these people in the news is that people think that they have agency. People think that Peter Thiel is in charge, or Elon Musk is in charge, or Donald Trump is in charge. And what my friend said to me is, he said, they're not in charge. They do what they're told. And when you do what you're told, then you get to keep living, and you get jets and, all kinds of perks. But if you don't do what you're told, then bad things could happen to you. So I think that frame changes the way that that's why I don't really pay attention to the news anymore. I really think it's a TV show. I think, Trump is in the World Wrestling Federation Hall of Fame for a reason.
They're all actors. Half his administration is right over from Fox News. It's like right there for everybody to see.
Well, and all these people are clearly unqualified. Hesketh is not qualified. Okay. Marco Rubio is not qualified. Tulsi Gabbard is not qualified, but they're actors. They look good. Literally, it looks like Aaron Spelling picked them, right?
Tulsi Gabbard is even going with that whole X-Men rogue cartoon character thing with that gray streak in her hair, like right out of a comic book.
Right. Well, you wanted to talk about epistemological warfare. Tulsi Gabbard.
How are they using the words to mind control us? You have a great, let me pull up all these keywords in your article here real quick about it. Where is it? This one, anyway, go ahead.
Tulsi Gabbard appeared a couple of weeks. There's a video about this on my Substack someplace. Tulsi Gabbard appeared a few weeks before Trump took office at something I think called the American Liberty Conference. And I've been researching hypnosis for about 4 years. Scott Adams got me into it. And I took pictures of Scott Adams, and I asked him, I spent a day with him, and I asked him when I was with him, I said, I wanted to learn how to be a hypnotist. How do you do that? And he really kind of like danced around. He did not want to explain to me how to act. He goes, well, I guess you could read a book by Milton Erickson or something like that. So I wound up doing some digging, and I read this book called...
Do you believe he's trained by the intelligence agencies? Scott Adams, publisher of Dilbert, famously an interweb personality.
I'm not sure, but I'll tell you that he does use tradecraft. Okay, and here's what I mean by that. I taught myself how to recognize neurolinguistic programming. The difference between a hypnotist and somebody like me is a hypnotist practices all the time. But the way that neurolinguistic, I'll try to make this really quick. The way neurolinguistic programming works is that if I was to ask you all of the things that you did today from the time that you woke up till the time that this show started in the most amount of detail, it would take you longer to explain to me everything that you did than to live it. And so if I ask you about your day and I say, how are you doing today, Sam? And you say, I'm doing fine. you're using 3 words to explain your entire experience of your day. Okay. So what we do when we speak, what I'm doing right now as I'm talking to you, is that we delete, we distort, and we generalize our what Noam Chomsky calls deep structure of memory in order to fit into the number of words coming out of our mouth. So we're all deleting, distorting, and generalizing all the time, right? And so what people who learn how to do neurolinguistic programming do is that they learn how to recognize whether or not somebody's deleting, distorting, or generalizing. And then you can come up with questions that you can use in order to move a person's frame into wherever you want it to go. So
you talk about how Tucker uses this technique in his interviews.
Tucker starts every interview with something called a mere agreement frame. Again, this is on my website, or if you just want to Google better think twice before answering question, mere agreement, MERE-agreement. You'll find a white paper. Basically what it says in the pickup artist world, this is also known as a yes ladder, but what the technique involves is saying a bunch of things, and this is not a new technique. By the way, Aristotle wrote about this 2,000 years ago, okay, in rhetoric. It's basically, if you start off any kind of presentation by a long list of things that everybody who's watching you already agrees with, that by the time you get to the suggestion part of your hypnosis, that is getting to the point where you're saying something that you want the people who are listening to you to believe, if you've already started off the conversation with a bunch of things that people already agree with, they're going to be much more likely to agree with whatever the suggestion is that you have. And Tucker, as part of a routine, does that. But he's not alone. Rachel Maddow does it. Bill Maher does it. Sean Hannity does it. Rush Limbaugh used to do it.
They're all trained in these same techniques, all these big media talking heads out there.
Yeah, exactly. They're all, from a linguistic standpoint, there is no difference between Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson. They both use the exact same linguistic frameworks in order to make their points.
But one speaks to left wing and another speaks to right wing.
Correct, yeah.
And that's a big part of the mind control they're using to social engineer society.
I would argue that Rachel Maddow is Fabian. Rachel Maddow
is she also a Rhodes Scholar? It seems
that's why I say that. She's a Rhodes Scholar. Yeah.
Seems all these people are, when you look at their background, all come up through these same institutions.
Cecil Rhodes started the Round Table. It's in this book.
Is that in there? It's famous from, I know it from the Anglo-American Establishment by Carol Quigley, right?
Yeah, Carol Quigley is all over this book. Carol Quigley, Guido Preparata, my buddy Guido. He's all over this book too. Anyway. So they go to these places and they get trained in all this stuff, and then they get installed as talking heads or politicians or whoever, business leaders,
influencers, right? In different industries and positions to influence the mass public.
Correct.
And they've been handpicked and trained up a long time ago.
Right. So what's interesting though about learning neurolinguistic programming, and I've talked about this before. There was the book that I thought was the best book for learning how it works is also an incredibly salacious book. It's called The Game by Neil Strauss, and it's about pickup artists on Sunset Boulevard. But it's a well-written handbook on how hypnosis works, and it's got a great syllabus. And that's how I learned about Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Neurolinguistic programming, by the way, I'm convinced is a U.S. military program. There's nothing new about it. Okay, it's like I said, the techniques are thousands of years old, but the United States Army in the late 1970s and 1980s wanted to be able to train people how to do it. And so this guy, John Grinder, who's U.S. Special Forces intelligence, retired, got together with a grad student named Richard Bandler, and they put together this program called Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and they trained this. They had an assistant that they trained named Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins' first contract, there's a video, it's on my website, of him talking about it. He talked to, what's his name, Bet David. There's
Peter Bet David, I think is his name.
Yeah, Tony Robbins talked to him and explained to him how he increased the ability of American soldiers to kill people with pistols. He doesn't frame it that way, but that's how I'm framing it. And that was like his, and Bandler and Grinder and Robbins had a lot of military contracts
because they didn't want to do the killing with a pistol like that up close because it's more personal, and so he got him over the humanity of the whole act.
No, he talks about shooting paper targets and the accuracy of paper targets, but we all know why you use pistols.
Yeah, to kill people.
You don't use pistols to shoot paper targets. So
up close, terminating people.
Right. So so it seems like the boom, 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 kind of Jason Bourne kind of shooting was Tony Robbins is probably responsible for a lot of American soldiers being able to do that.
Wow, what an achievement.
Yeah. Anyway, language, liberty. Tulsi Gabbard.
Tell us about liberty. I saw you posting that we've been deceived by the meaning of liberty. Explain the difference between liberty and freedom to us.
Okay, and this goes back to Fabius Maximus. Fabius Maximus is the namesake of the Fabian Society. And if you go to the Fabian website, or if you go to the Fabian Wikipedia page, Fabius Maximus is famous for slow attrition, for like moving things slowly. Okay. But one of the things that you don't read about on the Fabian website or on Wikipedia, and only if you go to a book that was written by someone who went to Oxford, which is called the word freedom in Greece. I'll have to go find the name of the book. I write about it. It's on my Substack. Anyway, freedom means the ability to do whatever you want. Okay, and it's closely associated with our internal thinking processes, right? Liberty is freedom that somebody allows you to have. And the thing that's implicit about the word liberty is that if somebody gives you that freedom, they can also take it away from you. And so the real question, when you look at the word liberty on all of the things that are associated with, and there's hundreds of them, it's not just the United States, but I'll pull up the seal of the Senate of seal of United States.
So they've been selling us this idea of freedom, liberty in the back, when they all know that it's just what they are allowing us to have.
Yes. United States Congress, right? United States Senate. Sorry, Senate. And yeah, this is the big tell here. All right, and I'm going to share this.
And you nailed Doge right off the bat. As soon as they announced it, you started calling out that funny hat and all this kind of stuff, right? And you're like, wait a minute, this is all goes way back, some kind of a cult ritual.
Right. Well, I am standing on the shoulders of giants. Lyndon LaRouche put together a lecture series in 1992, I believe, called Palmerstons Zoo.
Yep. I covered it on this show, but tell us about it again, please.
Yeah, and Palmerstons Zoo basically is a 4-hour lecture, which I have recreated at the Duke Report. The only existing copies of it online were the terrible YouTube videos that look like they were made with VHS tape, and the audio is terrible, the lighting is terrible, the video is terrible. So I found the scripts, and then I used AI to turn it into a podcast, and it sounds pretty good. Like you can get through it. But beyond that, for every lecture, I went and I researched all of the things that they talk about. So for each podcast on the Duke Report website, there's all the lecture notes for that section of history.
See, that leads me, for people that don't know Palmerston, leads me to say that they're using Israel as a scapegoat there when the real power's back in the UK. And so they've allowed anti-Semitism, clear hate against Jews all over the internet, and now they're going to crack down over that, I believe, is what's coming.
Well, there was a guy named Henry Wentworth Monk, okay, who his handler was John Ruskin. John Ruskin was Cecil Rhodes and Arthur Milner's handler at Oxford. And during the Civil War, John Ruskin dispatched Henry Wentworth Monk to go meet with, now the British were supporting the South during the Civil War. So he sent Henry Wentworth Monk, who was a Canadian, to go meet with Abraham Lincoln. And Henry Wentworth Monk went and met with Abraham Lincoln in 1864 during the middle of the Civil War, okay, to petition Abraham Lincoln to support the idea of creating a Jewish homeland in Palestine. He was an Anglican.
In 1864. So
and there's a book written that I again, I'm rebuilding the book. 2 days after the fire, my website went down. My Duke Report website.
I know we're jumping all over the place. Peter, I felt like I finally made it because the Weaponized news feed made it on the Duke Report, and then the fires burned it all down. And so I'm selfishly wanting the Duke Report website back up there.
Well, I'm fixing the book section first, and then I'll move on to the feed reader, which is how Weaponized news. Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed, but the number of feeds on the Duke Report was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, because as I started to realize that there's this permanent dialectic that we're in all the time, and that there are certain players like the Rachel Maddow team, and their entire point is to keep all of those people frozen in that political mindset. And then there's the Steve Bannon team on the other side, and their entire purpose is to keep all those people frozen into that mindset. I just started getting rid of anybody who is permanently, anybody that we're in a situation right now where our natural ability to think critically, which is what Jesus means when he says you have to be like children, okay? Because little kids always ask why, right? Our thinking has been replaced by knowing. Like we want to know why this happened instead of trying to figure out how it happened or why it happened. The what becomes knowledge, and knowledge is kind of a noun, and it just kind of sits there like a car in your garage, and you wind up defending it, as opposed to thinking, which is where you're constantly trying to figure out what's actually really going on. Most of the talking heads are involved in one side of the dialectic or another. And if they're involved in one side of it, I don't care if it's Muslim, anti-Muslim, Hamas versus Israel, black versus white, Jews versus non-Jews. These are all dialectics.
Republican, right? Democrat, that's
yeah.
How they control society right there.
Right, exactly. And if you start to realize that, when you start to realize that these are all these categories are fake, like the politics is all fake, then you have to ask cui bono. Again, I'm using Latin. I should be using Greek. If I knew what cui bono was in Greek, I'd use Greek, because I think Greek's a better language than Latin. But anyway, you have to ask who benefits from all this stuff. But put this thing up on the put the thing up. I just want to talk about this for a second. So Liberty, the cap. What color is Trump's hat? It's a red hat, right?
Red, yes.
Okay.
And they part of the mind control program is they're using symbology all over the place.
Yes. So liberty, if we know that liberty is not freedom, liberty is freedom that somebody has given you. And I assume when I look at this that your liberty is given to you by the United States Senate. That's what this symbol says to me. Okay. And then you see on the bottom, you see two crossed fasci, right? And we've been told that's a bundle of sticks and it's an ancient symbol and it really does, it's just been carried over. But that's not true. So liberty is freedom that has limits. What defines the limits of your freedom? What defines the limits of your freedom are the fasci. So the fasci are not a bundle of sticks. It's a bundle of riot batons. Okay. So these things were carried by the lectors, who were basically the house guard of the emperors. And when the emperor made a pronouncement, if the crowd started to get out of control, they took the straps off of these things and they started handing out the batons, okay, to the riot police. And if that didn't work, then they would pull off the axes and they would start chopping people's heads off. So the limits of liberty are defined by fasci. That's what this means. Okay. And these two symbols of fasci are behind the lectern in the House of Representatives. They're up there on the wall. The fasci are on the cornices of all of the furniture in the House and the Senate. They're everywhere. But Sam, can you read Roman numerals?
I used to be able to.
The straps on the fasci on the bottom there look like two Roman numerals. What Roman numerals are those?
20, 10 and 10.
No, it's IXXI.
Okay.
IX is 9 and XI is 11.
So it's saying 1911?
No, it says 9/11.
Not. Oh, wow.
Okay. Okay.
That's pretty good.
Okay. It gets crazier. Okay. I mean, Trump is president 45 and he's president 47.
Yeah.
What's 4 plus 5?
4 plus 5 is 9.
What's 4 plus 7?
11.
Yeah. So, okay. I don't know what that means. Okay. I'm not sitting here telling you that I know what that means. All I could tell you is that on the Senate, on the crossed fasci on the bottom of the United States Senate coat of arms, it says 9/11, and Trump's two presidencies are 9/11. And if somebody wants to explain to me what 9/11 really means, who wears a red hat? Oh yeah, the red hat. The red hat is the Liberty cap. It's called the Phrygian cap. The Phrygia is kind of comes from Anatolia, like south of the Black Sea, like Turkey, and then it moved east. But the Phrygian cap is also associated with the cult of Cybele and Isis. Cybele and Attis, and Attis is a castrated shepherd who looks a lot like the Statue of Liberty. Again, there's pictures of this on my Substack. Again, I don't know what this means, except that there's a Roman cult called the cult of Cybele and Attis. They wore the Liberty cap was given to people like by Fabius Maximus. Oh, I hadn't finished the Fabius Maximus story. Fabius Maximus was the emperor when Rome conquered Greece. And the Greeks used these two words. They used these words eleutheria, which meant freedom, and autonomia, which meant self-determination, autonomy, right? And the Romans said, we're not going to use those words anymore. We have this new word that we're going to use. It's called liberty. Liberty is freedom that we give you. And if you behave, you can have your liberty. And if you don't behave, then we are going to take your liberty away from you.
We bush out the fasci.
Right. So, anyway, my daughter is not being. My daughter lost her job a few hours ago, and
Sorry to hear that.
and she wants me to talk to her on the phone, and this always happens right when I've decided that I'm going to do a podcast. So
sorry to hear about that.
anyway, my heart goes out to my daughter. Anyway, so liberty is a switcheroo on the word freedom. Okay, and so when I hear when I read now, again, getting back to the epistemological warfare, when I read, was it Nathan Hale who said, "Give me liberty or give me death"? I wonder whether or not Nathan Hale really said, "Give me freedom or give me death," and it got rewritten, because it turns out that for 100 years before Rhodes Scholars were showing up on television and telling us what to think, they were coming over to the United States and they were becoming the heads of the history departments at all the major universities and then rewriting all of our history books. There's a good book called The Poisoned Loving Cup. Kevin Cole over at unityofthepolis.com is the guy that I figured that out through. But anyway, so they've been rewriting our history books for like 100 years. So part of the reason that I've been studying, so epistemological warfare, just in short, is controlling society by how you know what you know. So the way that we know what we know most of the time is we read it in a book for people who read, we see it on social media, somebody taught it to us in school, or we watched it on TV or in a movie someplace. So these are all vectors. These are all kind of like knowledge vectors. And this is how we know what we know. And that belief system is usually based on the authority of the source. So, if it came from this professor who had these letters before and after his name, it has more authority than, if our friend Fred down on the corner told us, right? And so our belief systems are framed by the faith that we have in the authority of the things that we pay attention to.
That's what I'm going to say. Isn't that a logical fallacy that we all fall prey to, appeal to authority?
It is, but I'm so glad you brought up logical fallacies, because there's thousands of logical fallacies. You know what's great about neurolinguistic programming and the meta model, which is the thing that I was talking about earlier? There's only 11 patterns. And I learned this from a hypnotist. His name is Matteo Morelli. He's got a great channel on YouTube. Matteo Morelli, I told Matteo Morelli I wanted to learn hypnosis, and he said, "Do you want to be a therapist?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, are you trying to do self-help? Are you trying to quit smoking or lose weight?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, why do you want to learn hypnosis?" And I said, "Because I want to learn how it's been weaponized against us in media and in politics." And his answer blew me away. He said, "That's really easy. You only have to learn one pattern." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, they all use the same pattern. It's called a cause-effect complex equivalency. A cause-effect means this made this happen. And a complex equivalency is because reasons." Okay. And you can boil it down to a formula: if, then equals because. Or if you want to think about it like a math formula, if X, then Y, because Z. And what's interesting,
and once you understand this, you can break the mind control. You can't be mind controlled.
And you will automatically start thinking critically.
Wow.
It's a major benefit. So you could go, and again, this is part of epistemological warfare. If you tell people the way that you can be smart is by memorizing 1,000 logical fallacies, okay, and Peter Duke is telling you the way that you can learn how to think critically and be smart is to memorize 3 or 4 linguistic patterns, okay, that's pretty powerful. But here's where it gets crazier. You know who was doing this 2,000 years ago? Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth was doing the same thing. It's crazy. When I realized, he's doing linguistic reframing. When the Pharisees say to him, "Should we pay taxes to Caesar?" That's called a double bind. Gregory Bateson was the guy who gave it a name, in the 1940s. But obviously, Gregory Bateson didn't invent it because the Pharisees were doing it, right? Jesus does in neurolinguistic programming. Jesus does something called chunking up. He goes up a level. Okay, he doesn't answer their question directly. He says, "Give unto Caesar what's due to Caesar. Give unto God what's due to God." Okay, he answers a different question, right? That's neurolinguistic reframing. He's using neurolinguistic reframing in order to get out of the trap that they set for him. So the really important part of that example in the Gospels is not the Caesar part. Okay, it's not even the God part. Okay, it's the reframing part. Because if you can learn how to reframe, if you can learn how to recognize a double bind whenever you're in it, and by the way, double binds are everywhere. A Republican Democrat having a choice of two political candidates, what do they call it? They call it the lesser of two evils.
Every election is the most important of our lifetime as well.
Right. So but it's always the lesser of two evils. And the answer to the question is that the answer to the test, as George would say, is if you're voting for the lesser of two evils, then you're voting for evil.
Yeah, still, but hey, our guy has the red hat this time around. So hey,
right. So and the red hat, if you turn it, the Phrygian cap is on the Senate seal, and it's also on a pole on the state of New York and the state of Idaho, and like half of the states have Phrygian caps on their state seals. If you take the Phrygian cap and you turn it now the Phrygian cap means liberty, which is freedom that is granted to you, right? Okay, so the Doge of Venice, and I believe that we still live in an oligarchy, and it's still based on the same structure as Venice. It's been going for 500 years.
Modern, you had an article you published at the end of May here, the modern Anglo-Dutch Empire.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's just a summary. That's a summary of a book. Some of the articles on my Substack are just GPT summaries of books. Because I think that there's a lot of important books out there. Yeah, the modern Anglo-Dutch Empire. And I recently did I
listened to this one before the show. A key point that not many people still realize, as you point out, that drugs is how they're running this whole system. A major part of it is the drug trade.
Well, drugs help sell spirituality.
Drugs help sell spirituality. Okay.
Okay, because if you take ayahuasca or LSD or something, you have this out-of-body experience, right? And there's a lot of evidence that there's a crazy guy who I listen to sometimes named Ammon Hillman, and there's a hallucinogenic drug that just kind of grows as mold on wheat called ergot, and if you take it, it makes you sick like psilocybin, but it also makes you high like psilocybin. And so there's a lot of evidence that I think a lot of people back then were getting high. But the reason drugs become an important control vector, and I think that they've been a control vector for thousands of years, is because you can convince people of a lot of things when they're high. You can do lots of magic tricks, and I define magic as taking something that's self-evident and wrapping it in a mystery, and then putting somebody in between you and the thing that's self-evident. So, for example, Penn and Teller, if you go and see them in Vegas, right? They've got mechanical contraptions and all kinds of things that they've worked on and they've patented and they've invented, and they've got all kinds of word play that they use. They've got all kinds of sleight of hand that they use in order to misdirect your attention. But at the end of the day, they've got a lot of mechanical devices. They've got smoke and mirrors, right? There's a great Matt Ehret talks about this all the time, and Cynthia Chung. There's a story by a guy named Frederick Schiller called The Ghost Seer, which is about this he's a royal guy. He's a monarch, or he's in the monarchy, and he's in Venice, and somehow these Venetian magicians play a bunch of tricks on him and get him to believe that he's seeing ghosts. And get him to start giving up a lot of his family secrets based on the fact that he thinks that he's seeing ghosts. But it's literally smoke and mirrors in the story. And so I think that drugs play a major component in initiation rites, getting people high, convincing them that they've seen God, and then it's part of the big mind control matrix. And it also generates a huge amount of money, and it's also very good for destabilizing society.
As we're seeing today, modern day fentanyl here in America, a lot of people. Friends and family know somebody that is overdosed on opiates.
Yep. Indeed. And that's all. It goes back, I was just reviewing, I posted a story up on SoundCloud that I posted on my Substack a few months ago. Matt Arrett found this guy named Uwe, UWE, Altshell, who has found a painting painted by Adolf Hitler in 1910, and it's a self-portrait. So Adolf Hitler was a kid; he was like 17 or something years old, and it's a self-portrait of Adolf Hitler, and he's sitting on top of Tavistock Bridge. Well, Tavistock Bridge is in England, so he was in England in 1910. In Tavistock, and Tavistock is what the Tavistock Institute is named after. And Tavistock, the bridge is on an estate that's owned by the Russell family. The Russell family, Bertrand Russell, Lord Bertrand Russell, is famously a Fabian socialist philosopher, but he's in the Russell family, and the Russell family was running the opium trade during the Opium Wars a few decades before that. So the Russell family also started the Russell Trust, which founded the Skull and Bone Society at Yale. So there's Russells all over the place. And it seems like they might be directly tied to Adolf Hitler and the grooming of Adolf Hitler.
That speaks that he was trained by UK intelligence.
Yeah. Well, in this book, they name the two handlers. They name Adolf Hitler's two British handlers in this book. I don't remember their names off the top of my head because I just learned them a couple of days ago.
And so that tells us that it's all controlled, and we know that also. We also know that Wall Street, right, from Professor Anthony Sutton, that Wall Street funded the Nazi efforts as well there in World War II.
Yeah, and the Wall Street banks that are all involved are all Rothschild cutout banks. So, so J.P. Morgan and Kuhn and Loeb and also Brown Brothers Harriman. I don't know if Brown Brothers Harriman is a Rothschild bank, but it probably is.
So
anyway,
at one level, they're all in on the game, the very top level, but then the rest of the levels so that part's like fake and rigged, but then the rest of it, real people are dying and
millions.
Yeah,
millions, and that's why somebody is saying we funded both sides. They funded both sides, okay? Because they are not us. They are not.
Yeah, are you in the elite top level secret society banking families?
I don't think I would be living in a furnished single in Santa Monica, California right now, waiting for the next riot. If I was a Rothschild, or if I had any more means than I do at this point. I wanted to finish the story about Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard goes to the American Liberty Conference, and she's on her way to this conference, and she realizes there's a video on the internet, and there's a video on my Substack. I scraped it and I put it on my Substack. She got up in front of this conference called the American Liberty Conference, and she read the Webster's Dictionary definition of liberty, and it doesn't say what I just told you it means. So she got up there and said, it's a very important that we know what this word means, but the description that she read doesn't actually say what liberty means. And this is what I mean about epistemological warfare. Part of the reason that the way that I found out about the fasces, the way that I found out about Fabius Maximus redefining freedom and autonomy as liberty in 240 BC, so 240 years before Jesus, okay, is because of two books that were published by Oxford. So if you go to Oxford and you get the books, they'll tell you what really happened. But people like Arnold Toynbee, and Lyndon LaRouche was warning about this in the 1970s, and he wound up getting thrown in jail. And part of the problem that I have with Lyndon LaRouche is that he thought that he could use the broken system in order to fix it, and he kept running for president. And I'm not sure that if your car has a blown piston, that trying to drive it to the mechanic is the best way to get it fixed.
Well, then FDR told us presidents are not elected; they're selected, right? Right,
and then I believe Winston Churchill probably had him assassinated at the end of the war. So that's what the metadata tells me. Because his son Eliot, he told his son Eliot that Winston Churchill was really upset with him when he told him that he didn't fight that war to reinstate the British Empire. So the LaRouche people talk about that all the time.
They're big on UK controls everything, right?
Well, it's the people. It's not even UK controls everything. It's the people who control the UK. My wife and I started to watch The Kingsman last night because somebody told me about how inverted it is. Everything in that movie is backwards. The British are the good guys. They're trying to save the world. It's everything is the bad guy is a guy who's trying to control the world and save it because of climate change.
Peter, you got to give them credit though. How does this little island right here, right? How did this little island or people from there? How do they control this whole map? Right?
I'm glad that you asked that question. I'm so glad that you asked that question. I have to pull something up though. Let me go. Let me go to my Finder here, and I'm going to pull up a picture because the map that you have behind you, I might talk you into getting rid of that map and getting a new map.
I've had other people tell me that my map is wrong.
So I am going to pull. I think I might have this as a slide deck. Let me see if I. Let me go into Keynote. Hang on a second. Keynote, file, open. Do I have a Mackinder? Mackinder map. I do have it. Okay. Why is it? Okay. Here
in the chat, they're saying City of London.
It is the City of London,
which is like isn't it a separate city state within the larger London?
It is a sovereign entity, okay, which means that it so Mackinder, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do two things. It is sovereign, which means that they have autonomy over the rest of the country. They don't have the same laws. They have like the Vatican, like CERN, like the Bank of International Settlements. They are all sovereign, meaning they are outside of the hand of governments. Okay, so I don't know what the best way for me to do this is. I should have. All right, I'm just going to pull this map up. Here we go. No. Yep. Here we go. Ping, and then I'm going to share it. So the map that you have behind you is a National Geographic Society. I think it's a Mercator projection of the world. This is not the map that the globalists use. Okay. This is the map the globalists use.
I've seen you report this before. Explain this to us, please.
Okay,
Let me put that on the screen.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So in 1904, a guy named Halford Mackinder, who was a Fabian socialist and the first president of the London School of Economics that was founded by George Bernard Shaw, Beatrice and Sidney Webb, because they thought that their neighbor in London, Karl Marx, didn't know anything about economics, and that they liked what Marx was doing, but they thought that having violent revolutions was a bad idea. They thought that they should do things to move slower, and they also thought that that he really didn't know anything about economics, and so
that's the rift between the great revolutionaries, right? The Fabians and the Marxists.
That's right, and they started the London School of Economics. The president of the London School of Economics was Halford Mackinder. Halford Mackinder was a geographer, and in 1904 he did a speech, which you can download. It's in the Internet Archive. I've got it in the book section of the Duke Report. When I get it back up, I'll be able to share it. But this is the map that Mackinder uses, okay? And he calls that area in the middle the Great Island of the world, okay? And there's another part of this map I'm gonna stop sharing this for a second, and I have a different version that I will share. I was trying to do this as a slide deck so that I could go through it. I might try one other thing here. Heartland, where's the Heartland? Here we go. And I'm gonna add this slide, screen share. Sorry about all the confusion here. Graphics. Okay, so geographically, he calls this the Heartland. So do you recognize what part of that world that is? It's Russia.
Yeah, that is Russia, yeah.
Okay. And so what Mackinder said is that part of the world is the most defendable area of the world, as Hitler and Napoleon both found out. He said, geographically, because of the mountains on the south side, which are to our right, and the North Pole and the Arctic Ocean on the left side, and the steppe, which separates Europe from the heart of that area, that it is the most defendable geography in the world. Okay, and that there is no way militarily to conquer that part of the world, because they have all the natural resources and all the people and all of the defensive structures that they need in order to be able to control their own destiny. And the Venetian, Roman, Dutch, Anglo-American empire that rules the world today rules the world by controlling the blue parts of this map. Okay, it was the sun never set on the British Empire. Britain controlled the oceans. After World War II, America controlled all of the oceans on the planet. So it's incumbent upon an empire that is based on control of commerce over water is called a thalassocracy. Okay, so fundamentally what we're dealing with is a thalassocracy. The biblical name for a thalassocracy is a leviathan. A land-based oligarchy is called a tellurocracy, and that the biblical definition of a tellurocracy is the behemoth. So the leviathan is a seaborne monster. The behemoth is a landborne monster. And so what Mackinder said is that because Eurasia, the heartland, is attached to Europe, to China, to India, to the Middle East, and then to Africa, through the land bridge of Sinai, that if the people who control the heartland, who are the Russians, ever figured out a way to broker peaceful relations with all of the people on the quote unquote great island of the planet Earth, there is no amount of military, economic, or other type of warfare that could be used to control that tellurocracy, to control the behemoth. And the thalassocracy, that economy, that empire of economy that was based on control of the oceans, would become irrelevant. Okay, so why does this become important? I have one more page.
Is this the big battle that we're seeing right now? Why they
Yeah.
Why they're fighting so hard against Russia when it looks like it's not our interest what's happening in Ukraine, Russia?
It's 100% the reason. Okay, and I have one more.
Because they fear that Russia would gain this power if.
Yes, and I can back that up with two different graphics that I will pull up. Here is.
It looks like Russia is moving that direction as they continually say how good of buddies they are with China now, and also continually talking about the Greater Eurasian Partnership.
Right. Okay, so here is, I have this graphic that I'll show you, and then I will do one more after this. Okay, so here we go. This is graphic. Screen, share screen. Okay, you can share this one. Okay, so the strategy, and again, everything on the, if you want to, if you look at the Council on Foreign Relations, if you look at the Atlantic Council, if you look at NATO, if you, all of their rhetoric all backs this up. Okay, the red arrows represent the areas. Again, this is why the map becomes really important, that you may want to have behind you instead of the National Geographic map. And I'll send you graphics. And I've been thinking about selling these on the Duke Report so people could put them on their wall. But the places where there's red arrows is where it's important to make sure that the Eurasian landmass never connects with Africa. This is not a trick question. How many railroads connect Eurasia to Africa?
Shoot, none.
0. How many railroads connect North America to South America?
None.
None, right. But they're connected by land. Why is that? During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln was in negotiations with Tsar Alexander II to build a tunnel under the Bering Strait and to connect North America and Russia. And that's why the Russians basically gave Alaska to the United States, because they wanted to build a railroad between North America and Russia. Again, the thalassocracy does not want that to happen. So if you look at the red arrows, the one on the left is the Rock of Gibraltar. The next one over is Ukraine. The next one over is, let me see. That's like Turkey and Greece. And then there's the Kurdistan is the next one over. And then Iran. All of these areas are the places where we have trouble spots in the world right now. And that area where all those red arrows is, Mackinder called in his 1904 treatise called The Geographic Pivot of History, he called that the land of 5 seas. He said the land of 5 seas is the most important real estate on the planet if the thalassocracy, if the British Empire, if the people who maintain control over the planet by forcing all commerce over water, that they need to make sure that there's as much mayhem in this part of the world as possible in order to guarantee the geographic advantage they have by forcing all commerce over water. Okay, so I'm going to back this up with one more piece of evidence, which is an animated GIF. There we
Because
go.
if they ever got together and had peaceful trade over those routes you just saw, they would lose their power over trade by sea.
That's exactly it. And once you understand that, it becomes very simple to pay to what's going on in the news and who's on what side. So, for example, there's all these people with British accents, like, who point to aliens, or they point to Satan, or they point to out of this world actors as responsible. Okay, because they don't want. It's the frickin' British. Okay, it's not more complicated than that. Okay, but it's not the British. It's not the the people who are going to pubs.
They're victims of the system, just like all the rest of us.
Just as many of them have died in stupid wars as we have. Right. Okay, so this is the last. Okay, so this is the last thing that I'm going to play. Oh, and this one I can control it. Oh, this is nice. This will be better. Okay, view. I'll just share it. View, window. Here we go. All right. So maybe I can hide the thumbnails. Try hide thumbnails. Hide sidebar. Here we go. Okay. So there's Halford Magender on the right there, and this is the logo for the United States Army, the United States Military Central Command. Now, I have a question for you, Sam. Again, these are rhetorical questions. I'm not trying to trick you, but Sam, why is the Central Command for the United States of America not in Wichita, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri?
I hear you. In the center of America.
In the center of America.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Central Command? Now, the logo, you got the eagle, which is the Roman eagle, right? The eagle of Rome. Okay. And if you look behind it in the little map, this little map is on the Central Command logo. In fact, I think I can hit my arrow keys, and
because we're making damn sure they never have peaceful trade routes through that region.
Okay. The I should have pulled this up first. The logo for Central Command has the exact map that is in the 1904 Geographic Pivot of History speech by the president of the London School of Economics, Lord Halford Mackinder, that he called the area of 5 Cs, that he defines as the area that is required to maintain the maximum amount of mayhem. And I added the last arrow there because Trump is now trying to grab Greenland. And if you look at the map this way, Greenland becomes a lot more significant, don't you think?
Indeed. And Trump has said that it is strategically significant.
Yes. But Trump didn't tell you that it's strategically significant because of the last 3 arrows that I added on here.
No, he didn't say why. He just said it is.
Yes, it's because if you wanted to attack the heartland, or if you wanted to minimize the defensibility of the heartland, then that's what you would do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the strategy. And the reason that Great Britain created Zionism is, my take is 2 reasons. One is I think that they are anti-Semitic. Okay, I don't think that they like Jews. Okay, and I also think that by getting Jews to feel like there's no safe place for them on the planet except Israel. Okay, you can force a lot if they don't all move back to Israel. At least the people who aren't moving are going to keep sending money to Israel. And so what you need to do is you need to continually make Israel a point of contention, so that you don't ever wind up normalizing land-based commerce to the point where you could build railroads across the Sinai Peninsula and connect Africa to Eurasia, because God forbid that happened. So this is the reason why I think that we're seeing.
And so that's why Western intelligence always, we find out, is funding, training, arming all of these radical jihadist groups in this region for destabilization. So peaceful trade can never happen.
They're training them. Al-Qaeda was trained by the CIA. The Muslim Brotherhood is funded by British intelligence. It's a sock puppet game where real people get killed.
Yeah, indeed.
So that's but that's the end of my graphics. But yeah, CENTCOM. Why I troll CENTCOM with this graphic all the time.
You better be careful. They may drone you coming up here soon, man. They're getting crazier and crazier with this attack that just happened. Hopefully it's not that big, but again, it's been reported since we came on the air, Israel has bombed Iran.
Here's the good news. I think Putin knows this. I think Xi knows this.
What do we make of that? Are all of these global world leaders in the same secret societies at the top levels? I think they are. It sure feels like they are.
Yeah, I do.
Like Xi, Putin, Trump, you name the world leader that's directing all of this.
I mean, Putin was friends with Kissinger, I think, when he was the mayor of St. Petersburg or something. Klaus claims that, he's friends with Putin.
Putin has the good based rhetoric, so then that makes people want to like Putin against the debauchery of Western liberalism that we see today, the wokeism. He looks like on the surface he's pushing back against that, so then that makes people like Putin and say, well, look, this is the counter, and so then we're back in the dialectic again.
Right, exactly. So that's what turn the other cheek and love your neighbor is all about, because what Jesus realized is that they were using the same divide and conquer tactics 2,000 years ago that they're using now. And the only way that you undo that is to turn the other cheek and to love your neighbor, which breaks that their ability to execute those kinds of mind control operations.
Wow. Wow, you've told us a lot, especially with that map in CENTCOM. That is quite striking. Why CENTCOM map is that region? They tell us through symbols, right? If we know how to read the symbols.
Yeah, that's what what's his name? The guy who wrote Morals and Dogma.
Albert Pike.
That's what Albert Pike said. Yeah, we communicate through symbols. So I just started looking at the symbols, and I thought, I don't think they're lying.
Oh man, quite a lot they've laid on us here today, Peter. We really do appreciate it. A couple more things before I let you go here. We're at the hour and a half mark. We'll plug now. Go ahead and plug your stuff, and I'll plug mine. And then a couple more questions, and I'll let you go, because I know that you had said you had a family issue going on there.
Yeah, I got to go talk to my poor daughter.
Plug all your stuff. I did see, and I am also celebrating Pride month here with the Weaponized News holograph sticker, the rainbow. But you have Pride. Let's plug your T-shirt here for Pride month that you're
all right.
Posted on the top of your.
I've been selling them. People like these. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, this is my Pride shirt. I thought, why leave all the other 6 out? Why stop with Pride? So this is all the 7 deadly sins, and you can get if you go to I think it's my pinned tweet at the Duke Report on Twitter. But if you want to support the Duke Report, you can go to the DukeReport.com. My website that Sam was talking about earlier went down 2 days after the fire. I'm rebuilding it slowly. I've got the book section that I'm getting up first. It's not there now, but if you want to support the Duke Report, you could become a subscriber to my Substack. I don't charge for my content. I was charging for some GPT prompts earlier on, but I'm not charging for any of my content, and I'm dependent on the kindness of people who think that I'm delivering value, and I have quite a few subscribers, which helps. You can also go to buymeacoffee.com/the Duke Report, and there are and you can buy me a coffee. You can buy me as many coffees as you want. You can click on the shop button. I actually have quite a few edgy T-shirts that are kind of fun. I don't. They're not political. They are beyond political. The one on the top right there you'll probably like, which is and if you click the little arrow, it'll yeah, there you go. Which is we need more rope. That's quite a popular one. I have that in about, I don't know, 12 different languages. I've taken the Gadsden flag and kind of tuned it up there a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of fun T-shirts.
We lost your audio. Peter, we lost your audio. I don't know what happened.
Am I back?
Yeah,
okay.
You're back now.
I have too many audio extensions in my laptop that I have to clean up because I changed my whole audio setup after the fire, and sometimes the audio just gets stolen by my operating system, and I don't know why. Anyway, so there's all, and if you click on About on the Duke Report, there's a whole list of ways that you can support me. Oh, I have a book. I took the protocols. I figured out that the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, every article that's ever been written about it, including a great article that Matt Air published a couple weeks ago, nobody talks about the content. Everybody talks about how it's plagiarized. And I could tell you that it wasn't written by, quote unquote, the Jews. It was written by British intelligence, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. And so what I did is I took AI, took GPT, and I took all of the cultural references out of the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, and I republished it as something called Stealth Democracy and the Illusion of Power, which you can buy for $10 at Amazon. It's a great deal. And then you can read the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, knowing that it was plagiarized, knowing that it's true, and you can associate it with British intelligence and understand what are the techniques that they use for controlling us.
Amazing. Right there again on the Duke Report. Just go to the Duke Report. Here's the website right here. All things Peter Duke. Let me plug real quick here. Go to weaponizednews.com. We have the 3 stickers there. Of course, the Pride Month one, our white background and the clear background. Put it in your laptop, your guitar, your bumper, your work locker. Someone has said 3 different stickers there at weaponizednews.com to help us support the cause of independent reporting and analysis like we bring you here on Weaponized News 5 days a week. Thank you for that. All right, Peter, in the last, what do we make? This just came out, back to Trump. It's just ridiculous. The Trump card, I don't know, you say you're not really following current events that much, but Trump is now rolled out with this whole, in the midst of alleged crackdowns on illegal immigration. He's rolled out the Trump card, trumpcard.gov. For $5 million, the Trump card is coming. Thousands have been calling and asking how they can sign up to ride a beautiful road in gaining access to the greatest country and market anywhere in the world. It's called the United States of America. The waiting list is now open. And then here is trumpcard.gov website. And so he's selling U.S. citizenship for $5 million here through the Trump card. What do you make of this?
It's a TV show.
It literally is, right?
It's a TV. I mean, this is like, I wrote an article about this a couple weeks ago, but Donald Trump was created by Mark Burnett as a TV character.
Reality TV, right?
Yeah, but it uses something called non-cooperative game theory, which was something that was written by John Nash and then weaponized by the Rand Corporation. And it's a form of mind control. And what's interesting about Mark Burnett is that Mark Burnett was a guy who was selling T-shirts on the sidewalk in Los Angeles before he became a showrunner. And it kind of reminds me of Chris Carter. I used to work I built the first World Wide Web entertainment website. I built the xfiles.com for 20th Century Fox. So I used to work with Chris Carter. Chris Carter, before he became the most successful showrunner on television with the X-Files, was the editor of Surfing Magazine. And so these like beachy guys, wind up becoming these incredibly powerful showrunners. I want to know what that career path looks like. You know what I mean? It's like,
what is all that about? And do you have any knowledge if X-Files was getting their scripts from the intelligence agencies?
I have it on. I had dinner the other night with somebody who told me that they used to work with Chris Carter. And again, I work with Chris Carter, but he never told me this. But it's another friend of mine who worked with Chris Carter, and she told me that the CIA was in his office every week.
So that's your next level Mockingbird media through fictional scripts.
Right, exactly. Well, it's all fiction.
It's all fiction. The tagline of your site, right? It's all.
Yeah, the tag. Yeah, and I learned this from working with my insurance. My intelligence operative partner. All news is made up. Some of it is true, but in the song "Springtime for Hitler," in the second producer's movie, Mel Brooks says it equally well. He says the only thing you need to know is everything is showbiz.
There you go. That's a great place to end it, Peter. Wow, thank you for dropping all this knowledge on us today. We really do appreciate it. Hopefully we can get you back on sooner. Everybody go support Peter. He's going through a lot. You're still trying to land over there after. Are you going to get compensated from the state, the city, the county, your insurance?
I don't know. And, I'm going through it right now because here's the thing. I literally had the best deal and lived in the nicest place, I believe, in the world. And so everything is a compromise at this point. Like everything that I'm looking at is not as good as what I had. And so I'm just gonna have to reconcile myself with that and my family, my daughter and my wife and, all of my friends, my neighborhood is gone. Like I don't have all my neighbors are not my neighbors anymore. They're scattered to the wind. We call it Pali Shima. It's and they're going to blame this on an ember or something. They're not going to go look for the oligarchs who started this fire. Cui bono, it's like look at the people who said that they needed to rebuild California 14 years ago, who are all going to rush in and remake this in their image. Steve Soboroff was a consultant for the Berggruen Institute, and when the day after the fire, when I was homeless, I said, "Look at what Karen Bass does next, because she's going to nominate somebody from Berggruen." And the next day, she nominated Steve Soboroff. Okay, and Nicholas Berggruen, over the years, has had 3 different senior officials, including a fire captain and the chief of the Los Angeles Fire Department and the assistant chief of the Los Angeles Fire Department, have both been consultants to the Berggruen Institute. Okay, so he's got 3 different LAFD connections. My question is, are those guys Freemasons? How many Freemasons are in the Los Angeles Fire Department? That's a question I have. I mean, maybe somebody out there in the audience knows.
That's a very good question. That explains how they're all working together in lockstep.
Indeed.
All right, Peter, thank you very much. Everybody go to the Duke Report to check out his great work. As always, everybody do your own research. Peace, love, and liberty. We got to change up liberty now that we learned about it.
Peace, love, and freedom.
Peace, love, and freedom. Speak out and take action. And we'll be back here tomorrow for more Weaponized news on the Friday edition.
Thank you, Sam.